Well, after what felt like a very short night, but a very comfortable one in Dale, it was time to be on our way for day 2. The plan today is just a short 9-mile hop up the River Cleddau. As we make our way up the river, we'll probably have to dodge the odd tanker as we pass by the refinery jetties, and of course negotiate the shallow waters on the entrance to the Milford Haven Marina, before we make our way up to Pembroke Dock, and then finally the run in to Neyland Marina itself, and home sweet home. Yeah, that all looks pretty straightforward. Well, this is a big difference from yesterday. Yesterday, it was t-shirt and shorts. Today, it's wet weather gear.
Details and live mask can be found on the website.
But today, there's no urgency, no time windows, no tides to meet, just a nice relaxing trip up the river as we make the 9-mile passage from Dale to Neyland. Well, at least today we've got some wind. Unfortunately, it's right on the nose again and doesn't help us making our passage up the river. As we pass Angle Bay, we seem to have the place to ourselves. Situated on the River Cleddau, the port of Milford Haven is one of the busiest ports in the country. And the River Cleddau has so much to offer mariners that you can actually spend a whole week here cruising and never actually touch the sea. I confess it's at this point I suddenly remembered that there's actually a boat jumble on today in Pembroke Dock at the Maritime Museum. So I make a quick check online to see what time the festivities are. I even go as far as looking with binoculars to see if I can spot anything. Am I really that desperate for a boating bargain? Well, in honesty, yeah. As we started to make our way into Neyland Marina, we came across the dinghy fleet that were out enjoying the weather, and it proved a little bit of a challenge negotiating our way backwards and forwards through the fleet. Despite dodging backwards and forwards throughout the fleet, we actually eventually managed to get a good transit on the entrance to the Neyland Marina. Let's talk about Neyland Marina. Neyland Marina has some 400 berths in total, and these are split between an upper and lower basin. The upper basin is only accessible so many hours either side of tide because there's a tidal sill you have to cross. The advantage, of course, is it's a little bit cheaper up there. The lower basin, on the other hand, has full tidal access, and most of the berths can be accessed irrespective of what the tide's doing. Having said that, it is actually very important that you do follow the correct channel here. If you have a look when the water's gone away again, as in a low water situation like this, you can see there's actually quite a lot of mud around the place. So it is very important that you do follow that channel whenever you enter or exit the marina. Now, the advantage of the lower basin is this tidal access. The disadvantage, of course, is that you pay a premium price. As we make our way into the marina, I'm conscious of the fact that we're actually driving past our berth, but there's a good reason I'm doing this. I wanted to give myself the best angle of approach coming into the berth, so In order to achieve that, I'm going to go deeper into the marina and come at this from the opposite direction. Now this involves actually spinning the boat round. Now this is really where the bow thruster would have been very handy. But instead it's a case of actually using forward and reverse gears and using something we call prop walk to get the back of the boat moving in one direction. Well, without getting too bogged down in the principles and practice of prop walk, suffice to say what actually happens is that because of the rotation of the propeller, it does actually create a sideward motion as well. In Double T's case, this means that when the engine is going astern, it encourages the back of the boat to its right or starboard. With the helm hard to port, it's a case then of working forward and aft gears to encourage the back end in one direction whilst the front is going in the opposite direction. Effectively, this way you can turn the boat round in almost its own length. But I'm very conscious at this stage that the depth sounder is showing next to nothing under the keel, and that's because of the mud banks I mentioned previously, so I don't really want to hang around. Well, that went as well as can be expected. In reality, my greatest concern at this stage was actually getting safely onto the berth. I was particularly concerned about the width available to us, or beam. Our previous boat was about 8.5 foot a beam. Double T is over 12. While sped up a little bit here, I tried to come into the berth as slow as I possibly could, and knowing that if I tried to use a bit of reverse thrust to slow the boat down, it would create the prop walk that I was trying desperately to avoid, because it would send us straight towards our neighbours. Perhaps being overcautious, I actually cut it in a little bit too close to avoid our neighbours. Thankfully the guys were all over it with the fenders and did a fantastic job of bailing me out. Safely secured on the berth, we made a beeline for Pembroke Dock and that boat jumble, only to find that they'd already packed up and left. And it wasn't even 11 o'clock. So we returned to Double T and started the clean-up operation, just in time for the rain to arrive. One thing that became immediately apparent to us on arrival was there wasn't a lot of space between us and the boat next to us. Now normally we could live with this, but this is a training boat alongside us, and it was agreed with the owner that perhaps this is a bit friendly. Unfortunately, the marina had nothing else available to us. But just at the right moment, we got a call from Milford Haven Marina. Now we've been on their waiting list for 2 years, but just by pure chance, our name had come up at the right time and they had a berth for us. So, it's a move of marinas. So this delivery isn't quite over yet. Milford Haven Marina is a little bit further back down the Cleddau, about 7 miles thereabouts. The port of Milford Haven, which includes the marina itself, does actually have quite a sizable fishing fleet operating out of there. Unfortunately, like Swansea, it is a lock-controlled entry, but I'm sure we'll get used to it. One of the big pluses of being in Milford Haven is that there's a whole host of shopping options for the vigilant. There's also various leisure activities, theatres and so on and so forth. The cost here, of course, is that it's going to be a little bit noisier than we're used to. However, there's one big plus. It is a little bit cheaper. So here we go yet again, back down the channel and out onto the Cleddau. Unfortunately, thanks to work commitments and crew availability, we had to make this next trip in less than ideal conditions. I'm also very aware that in order to get into Milford Haven, well, normally we might have to pass through a lock. Now I'll be honest with you, never having been into Milford Haven before, I was really concerned about this. So I was actually determined to get there during what they call the free flow, where the actual gates are open and you can go straight in once you've made contact with Pierhead. While it's just a 7-mile trip, unfortunately we were pushing into a particularly strong tide at this time. You can see the effect of this strong wind and tide. As I put a little bit of right hand down here, you see how quickly the boat reacts. Up ahead, I can see the Irish ferry making its way in. Of course, there's no need for us to hog the channel, so we move out of the way. Here's an interesting thing, the Oscar Wilde here with all its tonnage. Here's the wake it produces. But what about something this size? What sort of wake are we going to get here? Well, that's a strange thing. We were just commenting how well Double T had bobbed over the wake, but our trip was about to take a turn. In reality, the buzzer sound was actually very faint, so it was almost one of those things, am I hearing what I'm hearing? But there's no point in taking any chances, so it's a pop down below and make sure everything's okay. Now unfortunately, there are some bits missing on board Double T, like temperature gauges, so it's hard to tell what temperature the engine's running at. Unfortunately, the only way forward is to actually get down there and have a look yourself. Thankfully, I could find nothing really wrong. There didn't seem to be any leakage, anything come apart, and it just might be that I've been pushing this engine a little bit too far, trying to make that time window. Pretty happy there was nothing really fundamental wrong. All we could do was tentatively open up the throttle again and see if we can find a happy medium, where we make some progress, but also then we're not working the engine too hard. Not easy in this situation. Unfortunately, we had the same thing happen yet again. And looking back now, I really kicked myself because during this whole scenario, there's one important thing I've forgotten to check, and that is, are we actually cooling? The only way to do that is to look off the back and see that it's actually an output from the exhaust. While it's something I check every time I start the engine, here in this situation, it really should have been the first thing I checked. Guess there's a lesson learned. At this point, we're hoping the excitement's behind us, but you never know these days. Just out of the corner of my eye, I could see a boat approaching from our left-hand side, a small inflatable power vessel, on a converging course. Now, the rules of the road here mean that we're two equal status vessels. However, I'm on his right and therefore in the right. That means I'm the stand-on vessel, So I'm going to hold my course and speed for now and see what goes on. But I've got a feeling that perhaps this guy isn't really clued up on this stuff. So, common sense dictates that we're going to do whatever we have to do to avoid a collision. Unfortunately, a turn to the left is not really an option here because it closes the gap. So therefore, one of the key things we could do here is slow down and give him more time. Actually, as he crosses ahead of us here, it looks like he's got plenty of space. But I have to say, in truth, it was actually a little bit closer than that. But we had him covered. Well, hopefully with the excitement over and done with for a little while, we can now just kick back and enjoy the rest of this trip. Finally, it's time to start making our way into Milford Haven Marina. Now, as I said before, I've never been here before, so it's time to get the game face on. Luckily, we made it just in time for free flow. Unfortunately, with everything going on, we didn't get a chance to film our approach onto the berth. It wasn't pretty, but we did it safely. And now Double T is safely on a new berth in Milford Haven. Join us next time when we hit the ground with a bump. When we bought the boat, the bow thruster wasn't working. I made the mistake of asking an engineer to actually have a look at that, and long story short, we never got the motor back. And we start the task of making Double T family friendly. The bow thruster. Someone else has been busy doing the netting. It's going on great. And take you with us on our very first sail of the season.